Hi everyone, P. McGee here with my Week 3 battle in the Clodsire Premier League. As a quick recap, I am currently 2-0 in this league, positive 9. I had a couple of really strong games to start the season. Looking to hopefully continue that in my Week 3 matchup versus Fluvyx. I did extend an invitation to them to join me on the mic. It's very difficult to find times that work with folks out of Europe, and so we just have had a lot of struggles in getting a good time lined up. So, unfortunately, haven't been able to get them on the mic for this one. We were hoping to do that, just couldn't get it quite sorted out. So, I am returning to talking solo this week, but still very excited to talk about this matchup. So, we will start by looking over at his team and some of the things I'm not looking forward to dealing with on it. So first up, he's got a Weavile, not the scariest ice type, and certainly not the only ice type on his team. I have pretty good answers naturally with the Moltres, with the Archaludon to a degree, with the Pelipper, even to a degree with the Palafin. So it's some pressure. You know, the priority ice shard is pretty scary for a couple of my physical or a couple of my offensive options like Meganium, like a weekend Regieleki, like a weekend Nihilego, a Doug Trio at any health. But overall, I think the Weavile is not the most dangerous thing in this matchup. Just something to keep in mind as I'm building out. Cinderace is an interesting one. In a rain mode, Cinderace doesn't really have a lot of options to pressure hard. He has some niche ways of addressing like a Pelipper with the Electro Ball if he wants to run something like that. Moltres is generally a pretty good answer to him, although Cinderace is one of the two Pokemon I talked about during my post-draft analysis, where my speed gap between 120 and 103 for Nihilego opened up the 119 speed tier to being able to run Adamant Nature, which is Cinderace and Roaring Moon. And so, unfortunately, Cinderace will be enabled to run Adamant in this matchup as a result of that. And so, those gunk shots at an Adamant Nature are pretty dangerous pressure for me to deal with. Obviously, High Jump Kick for my Archaludon, U-Turn for momentum, Sucker Punch for priority. Pyro Ball is pretty good damage if I'm not running rain mode. So it can pressure pretty hard here, and something I need to keep in mind. However, it is not the most dangerous thing in this matchup. The atrocity that I need to deal with this week is the Iron Bundle, which is my worst nightmare. A fast special ice type with access to freeze dry is the most difficult thing I can run into with this team. I don't have a resist to freeze dry, not one, and it's a no terra league, so I can't even force one. So it gets to spam freeze dry without any concern the entire game. I need to find ways to address that defensively when I can't resist it. And then that speed tier is faster than me, except for Regieleki. But Regieleki and it are probably never going to see a one-on-one. So it's really, really difficult for me to address this Pokemon. It does well against me if I run rain mode. It does well against me under normal circumstances. So I need to find a good way to pressure this as quickly as possible. Next up is the Donphan. Primarily, I expect it to be there is the Regieleki answer. To a degree, it helps in the Hiligo as well. You can slap an AV on it. If it's full health, you've got the Sturdy to lean on. It has potential for like a Rindo Berry. So there's lots of ways that can shut down in the Hiligo, but then also answer the Regieleki. So fully expect to see that. Vaporeon, if I'm running a rain mode or just in general to help address Palafin, it's a really good answer. I really need to be like banded Palafin to break through that. Otherwise, it can just scald me for good damage, or if I'm trying to do a bulk upset, it can haze me. It's just a really good Pokemon to answer a lot of Palafin sets, unfortunately. The Skarmory isn't the most concerning Pokemon. I have good answers for it. Really don't even expect to see it. It's one of the few steel types that Nihilego can actually address really easily, just because of its weakness to electric. So Thunderbolt or Thunder, if I'm running rain, makes it really, really weak to me. So it's good for the hazard stack, and that's something I need to keep in mind. But from a presence in this matchup, it's really, really weak. So I don't expect to see it. Buzzwole has access to poison moves for Meganium, is just a tiny bit slower than Meganium, but has more incentive than Meganium to run speed. So it has answers to most of my team. If it wants to slot the coverage moves, has rock moves for Moltres, has fighting moves for Archaludon, has electric if it wants to address Pelipper. So it can do everything at once in this matchup if it shows up. So I need to be careful of that. Rotom-Mow is another good Regieleki answer, also a pretty solid Palafin answer, and a solid Dugtrio answer. So it has some defensive utility in this matchup that would be unfortunate for me. So I kind of do expect to see a Rotom-Mow here, but it's not a guarantee. Komala, I don't really have any expectation or major plans to address. Archaludon largely just hardwalls it by design. So I don't really need to over prep against this other than being aware of it as maybe a spinner or last resort choice band user. But again, Archaludon handles that pretty well. The Pheasantipity is a funny one here. I think it has a pretty bad matchup overall. It has no way of addressing Nihilego. Nihilego, without boost or without catching this thing weakened, has no way of addressing it since it has roost access and a really good special defense stat. So it's a Pokemon where we might find ourselves in a standoff with Nihilego where neither are able to break the other, and so somebody has to leave first. It has access to U-turn, so it has the ability to pivot out in front of or behind Nihilego because it is slower naturally. So I don't love the Pheasantipity here because it can do pretty good walling against one of my better offensive options, and it can also pivot out really well. Its natural special defense makes it a pretty good Mega Meganium answer, at least a check, but maybe outright a counter. So not looking forward to seeing that. Fully expect to see it. Fully expect it to be able to withstand both of those. And so trying to push through that will be a challenge. And then Hisuian Zoroark, I'm not putting a lot of consideration into. Solid Mon, but it doesn't exactly pop off in this matchup other than as a wild card trying to catch me making the wrong prediction on what Pokemon's on the field. So maybe he is bluffing a Cinderace and I send in, an Archaludon or something like that, and it's actually Hisuian Zoroark clicking Shadow Ball for massive damage. I mean, that's certainly possible, but I don't put a ton of stock into it. I think he's got really good Pokemon in front of it for this matchup, and he doesn't need to lean on the gimmick here to be effective, but certainly that's there for him if he needs. So with all that in mind, like I said, Bundle is disastrous for me. Really don't have a strong answer to it, and I'll talk about the answer I do have and why it's not really that strong of an answer. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Iron Bundle, Vaporeon, and Rotom-Mow really weaken how effective Rain is in this matchup. So I'm not looking strongly at Rain here. Vaporeon shuts down any sort of water spam for Palafin. Iron Bundle can take advantage of that water or that rain for extra strong hydro pumps, and then take away my existing answer to it right now. And so I don't like that. And then Rotom-Mow can obviously withstand some of that as well from both Regieleki and Palafin, and then to a degree from Archaludon, although it can't really pressure Archaludon back. So it's not the most dangerous in that front, but still its ability to withstand my water spam and my electric spam is notable. And so I'm not looking really well at using water or rain in this matchup because I just don't see it being very valuable. So looking at this, he's got 3 Pokemon right up front that are weak to Stealth Rocks. They can't all come and slot boots and be effective. I mean, they're going to need Choice Scarfs, Choice Bands, Life Orbs, some special berries, something like that. So I just don't see him being able to slot 3 boots and be effective that way. So something is going to be vulnerable to Stealth Rocks here. And so my ability to get and keep those on the field is going to be really, really important for me winning this game, I feel like. So I'm going to keep that in mind as I'm team building and how I want to use that specific Pokemon to address that. Vaporeon is kind of the Pokemon that's holding the defense together here. I really can't sweep that well with Palafin. I can't sweep that well with Nihilego. Meganium doesn't have the easiest time pushing through it right off the bat if it's got like a Rhino Berry. Even without a Rhino Berry, it can withstand one Solar Beam if it wants to. So I need to be able to push through this Vaporeon to open up the rest of my team. Archaludon doesn't like it either. It just has a hard time pushing through that, especially without the rain being there to boost the Electro Shots. So this is like the defensive Pokemon I see is causing the most problem for my team to be able to just blast through, and then once you break through that one piece, everything else opens up. I think the Vaporeon is that Pokemon, so the sooner I can address and remove that, the more it's going to enable the rest of my team. So I'm going to change some of my strategy this week on how I've been addressing or using some of my Pokemon. My Meganium this week is going very different than it's normally gone. It's going only 8 HP, 252 special attack, and then a 248 timid nature, so it gets that speed boost. I've typically been leaning very hard into the Meganium bulk, not trying to worry too much about the speed, but this week I'm really leaning into the speed. So at the current spread, it already outspeeds Buzzwole's 79 base stat naturally, which means I'm faster than it, so I have some protection from poison jabs as long as it's not scarfed. But the big thing here is that after a Trailblaze, I, in theory, am the fastest Pokemon on the field. So unless something is running Scarf, I am ahead of it, and I am hitting first with 3 really strong attacks. Weather Ball hits the Weavile, the Skarmory, the Buzzwole, the Rotom-Mow for super effective damage. The Earth Power hits the Pheasantipity for super effective damage if I've already weakened that to the point of no return, as well as the Cinderace. And then Solar Beam will pretty much take care of the rest. It'll blast through Vaporeon pretty well, blast through Iron Bundle, blast through Donphan. So with just those 3 moves, I can really dominate for damage output. And then if I can get that speed boost, then I really am in a position to sweep. I think thus far Mega Meganium has struggled to take off as an attacker. I currently have no KOs with it, unfortunately, despite really trying to build the team around optimizing Mega Meganium. She just hasn't really been able to pop. And so I'm trying to give her more of an opportunity this week by giving her the speed she needs to close out a game. So that's the hope here, and we'll see what we get with that. I think there's pretty good setup windows in front of Rotom, in front of Vaporeon, in front of Skarmory, all of who have to respect my damage output and don't really have great ways to address it. There is the potential for Gunk Shot on the Donphan, who does have access to that. If he's full health with Sturdy, then I can very easily just be KO'd back by a Solar Beam, bringing it down to 1 HP, and then it clearing me out with the Gunk Shot. Yet another reason I want Stealth Rocks in this matchup, just to get that little bit of chip so that I can take away a couple of the Sturdies on Pokemon. We have one on Skarmory, we have one on Donphan. So if I can reject those and get that little bit of chip to get them out of the Sturdy protection, then I think that will help optimize a couple of my Pokemon. But changing Mega Meganium's approach this week and trying to see if that will help get her moving along. Next up is the Palafin, also a change-up this week. He's still wearing a choice item, but this time I'm going to lean into the choice scarf, which enables him to run Adamant Nature, 252 attack, 4 defense, 252 speed, so that even though he is Adamant, he is still outspeeding the Rotom-Mow by 1 point. So even if I run into Scarf Rotom-Mow, I do have the advantage. So close combat, Wave Crash, Flip Turn, Encore. Don't need Jet Punch in this kind of matchup since I'm already leaning on being the fastest Pokemon, and there's not really great Jet Punch damage to be had against Bundle, who actually has a respectable defense stat, Vaporeon, who is immune, and then Skarmory and Rotom-Mow, who are both not taking very big damage. So I'm going for Mega Damage or Momentum here, and then I'm slotting Encore on the possibilities I run into a sub setup Vaporeon, which he ran last week, or a substitute Iron Bundle, just because that's always a possibility since Bundle's move pool is pretty limited, or just some other sort of setup or item click. Maybe I get a Pheasantipity locked in on a Roost, something like that. So just trying to give me a couple of options there to trap and limit what Pokemon could do. Maybe that opens it up for Mega Meganium to come in on the turn after and set up something like that. So I think this is a more effective set this week. I need that speed to be in front of the Iron Bundle, who can obviously easily break this with Freeze Dry. Possibilities of Cinderace being able to get Sucker Punches in and tank a couple of Jet Punches if I went that way. So being ahead of that's important. Or just Weavile. Jet Punch not necessarily being able to break through Weavile right away and it being able to knock off and things like that. So at least I'm keeping the speed in front of it and keeping the momentum. So that's kind of the way I'm re-angling that this week to just try to get more out of Palafin here. I was originally looking at a setup set, but I just didn't like the haze potential for Vaporeon or the Encore potential from Iron Bundle. I thought both of those would be ineffective, or both of those would be very effective in shutting it down, and I didn't think I would have enough moves to break through both of them safely. So this felt like a simpler but more effective setup for the week. Next up is our Chaladon, running a Modest Nature, 248 HP, 240 special attack, and then 20 speed. The 20 speed is just to help me creep past uninvested Rotom, help me creep past creep from maybe the Buzzwole in case it's not very speedy, but try to go speedy enough to get uninvested Archaladon. So that's kind of the goal here with him. He's running Stealth Rocks, Thunder Wave, Flash Cannon, Thunderbolt, and then holding the leftovers. So here, my goal is to get the rocks up as early as possible. He's my most reliable rocker in this matchup that doesn't need to serve as a sweeper or other sort of niche piece. He's got good opportunities in theory in front of the Rotom, in front of the Cinderace if I've already locked it into not high jump kick. So even if it has full access to high jump kick after whatever move it clicks, if I'm just taking away the stab option of high jump kick, I feel pretty good about my opportunity for putting up rocks there. Good opportunities in front of Weavile and Skarmory as well, because Skarmory has to respect the Thunderbolt potential, and it doesn't have very good special defense, so I can pressure that very well. Even Vaporeon to a degree, I can put rocks up in front of. But the issue in the matchup, obviously, is that Cinderace has court changed. It's something I need to be a little wary of. But I think if it comes down to it, I would rather us both have rocks up. So if he court changes on me, then I come back and put rocks up again. And that way I am keeping the rocks pressure on his side. He's got spin, obviously, with Donphan, so he can always try to get those out of play again. But I just figure if I need to be able to address Weavile, Cinderace, and Iron Bundle, having rocks on the field will really help me do that. There's a chance they're all boots, which is fine. That's really good information to learn, but I want to confirm as early as possible what I'm dealing with in this matchup. So the quicker I get rocks on the field, the quicker I have a gauge on the power level of a couple of these Pokemon. Because if they're not Choice Scarf, not Choice Specs, not Choice Band, not Life Orb, and they're just being cautious with boots, that really limits their damage output, which gives me better defensive answers to them. And then if they are those really high-powered options, then at least I can put them on a timer with the Stealth Rocks and limit their number of switch-in opportunities. And so I'm just trying to take advantage of that as early as possible. And from a damage output moves, Flash Cannon and Thunderbolt are the best coverage moves. Doesn't really have a way of dealing with Rotom, but Rotom doesn't really have a way of dealing with me, so it's a bit of a standoff, and I'm okay with that. And then Flash Cannon, Thunder Wave here for paralysis opportunities on the Cinderace, on the Vaporeon, possibly on the Iron Bundle, although I think I'm just happy clicking Flash Cannon or Thunderbolt in front of that. But just having that option to slow down some speed here if I need to, just to help a couple of my closers be a little better enabled to do that late game. Speaking of closers, I am finally not locked into running Assault Vest on the Nihilego this week. Assault Vest Nihilego was never going to be able to adjust bundle anyway because of the water spam would still be too much, so I'm not going to try at all with Nihilego as that answer. Instead, I'm going to lean into it as a sweeper here. Timid Nature, 80 HP, 176 special attack, 252 speed. The investments are in a way in which, once again, I will see the speed boost on any KOs, and then the Meteor Beam with the power will obviously give me the +1 to special attack. I could have finagled with it more, but looking at some of the calcs in this matchup, I needed as much damage output as possible. So even though I'm max speed and I don't need to be max speed, I can go as low as, what can I go as low as here? I think I can go as low as the Pheasantipity speed tier if I wanted, which would enable even like a Modest Nature. Nihilego, I just didn't want to lose any more firepower here. I needed as much as I could get, and I needed it to be a speed boost on KO. So I did a pretty basic spread here because of that, and I'm okay with that in the end. I think it'll be fine for the needs of the matchup. I'm not trying to take chunked damage anyway. I'm trying to come in and get that KO, be the fastest thing, and clean up. So Meteor Beam, obviously, to set that up. Switchlave is my strong stab attack that hits most things. Thunderbolt for specifically Vaporeon and Skarmory. And then Grass Knot for specifically the Donphan, who I expect to be strong on the special defensive side. So chances are I need a pretty weakened Donphan for this to be able to break it. But overall, I think this works really well here. After a speed boost, I should be the fastest thing on the field. After a Meteor Beam, I am able to KO or nearly KO a lot of these things. So if I'm coming in mid-game and I have rocks on the field, then the potential for this to sweep is really, really good. The big issue here is that even at +1, I don't necessarily two-hit KO Pheasantipity, and so I can get stuck against it being able to roost me out and just stall me, and so I may need to be really careful on how I play that. I could obviously call that and click Meteor Beam a second time and just take that extra turn and get the Meteor Beam off, because again, Pheasantipity has no way to really pressure my Nihilego, and so I can take advantage of that situation if I want to. I just need to be a little cautious on how I approach that. And then I got to be aware of the priorities. So Sucker Punch Cinderace is the most logical one I'm going to run into here. But I also have Ice Shard on the Weavile if it shows up to be wary of. So I need to be generally bulky enough to be able to withstand those damages. Next up is the Moltres, who is serving a somewhat defensive role in this matchup. 248 HP, 36 special attack, 224 speed with a timid nature. So that is to make it faster than the Buzzwole, make it faster than the Rotom, so that it's a reliable check in both instances. The Buzzwole has access to a Rock Slide, so it can predict and pretty easily KO a Skarmory, or it can run fast and be in front of in front of a Moltres and KO it with those rock attacks. So I could not lean into full defensive bulk here because it would just make me too slow for a couple of things. So I'm trying to opt for more speed here so that I can be able to at least check, if not outright counter, a couple of the defensive switch-ins I want it to be able to service for. So it's really good against Weavile. It's a valuable check against Cinderace, mostly because the Gunk Shot Adamant is still going to break me pretty quickly, especially if it has any sort of Life Orb or Choice Band on there. I wasn't going to be able to address that anyway with Moltres, but if I can scout for that, see what it's locked into type-wise at least, then maybe Moltres can be a better defensive answer there. And then obviously Buzzwole and Rotom, like I discussed. And then I have it with Defog just in case he starts to take off or he's abusing Court Change early on and I need to reset. I at least have the option to reset with the Defog here, so I can take advantage of maybe some uneven hazard stacking going on if the Skarmory's somehow getting spikes out or Donphan's got rocks up or I just couldn't get my rocks up yet. I want to be able to at least reset and try again so that it doesn't get out of hand for me. So that's what Moltres is doing in this matchup for me. And then the last Pokemon here is my bundle answer, as best as I can have one, which is the Slitherwing with a Careful Nature, 248 HP, 4 attack, 248 special defense, 8 speed. So the 8 speed is really just to skirt in front of a Buzzwole that's trying to creep me. In hindsight, I should have put a little more there. I should have made sure it outsped uninvested Rotom just so that I had an option to go first in front of it with U-turn if I wanted to. But I'm okay with how that played out. It limits my ability to address Rotom except as a first impression spam. But U-turn, first impression, Flare Blitz, Morning Sun with leftovers. I am really actually quite bulky against the bundle here. So I withstand Hydro Pumps pretty well. I withstand Freeze Dry fine. I withstand Ice Beam fine. The issue, however, is that Iron Bundle has Drill Peck, which is a quad effective move against me. And so if he's expecting to see this as the bundle answer, then it's not too difficult for him to run, say, Boots, click Freeze Dry because it's always free, bring me down like 35%, and then clean me out with Drill Peck and finish me off. So I need to be really wary and try to scout for that as safely as I can here because the answers outside of this are pretty non-existent. Everything is getting smacked pretty hard by Freeze Dry. Everything is getting hurt pretty hard by Hydro Pump except for a Chaladon and Meganium who aren't really switch-ins to those moves anyway. So this is as good as it gets as an answer to the bundle, but I'm going to try to make the most of it here. But the priority is really helpful here. Helps me beat Weavile, helps me take away bundle if he's weak later game. Cinderace, if he gets switched over to a dark type from like Sucker Punch, that's really great. Rotom, first impression, can do really well against. So the momentum is also valuable here. And if I get in front of a bundle who doesn't have Drill Peck or is locked in from a choice item, and it's locked into something I can withstand, then I have U-turn for momentum. It gives me some mobility if I need it to, but also I think it's just the only way I could slot any sort of possible answer here for the Iron Bundle. So I'm hoping to make the most of him in this matchup and try to withstand that, but obviously very concerned on how this might go. So that's my team. He was kind enough to send his paste, and so we will talk through that a little bit. Actually, you know what? I'm going to change my tune on that. Since we weren't able to get on the mic, and that was a big part of why we were going to go through his paste and talk through that, I don't want to overshare his side of it. I think he would have preferred to talk about it himself. So I'm going to withhold on that, and we'll only talk about what we're seeing in the game and what he was revealing in post-game. I'll keep his paste hidden for his sake since we weren't able to get on the mic and talk about it in person. So switching over to the match itself, looking at team preview here, I am somewhat relieved to not see Weavile just because it's just more priority I have to address, and I didn't want to have to worry about what it might be slotting to break through a Moltres. Maybe it was slotting protective pads or something like that, and it gets the Swords Dance in, and then Moltres isn't a great answer, something like that. Or it hits knockoff early, and then now I'm Rocks weak on the Moltres. So happy to not see Weavile. Happy to not see Buzzwole. Those are two things I have to be able to switch in on, and I didn't always have great answers. So seeing them not in preview is really, really nice for me. And then once again, I kind of talked about this last week when I was playing against Hamburger. I can see a very defensive-looking team in team preview here, which is always nice to see from my perspective. I see the Rotom, which is likely defensive. I see the Vaporeon, which is likely defensive. I see the Donphan, which is likely defensive. And then possibly the Fezandipiti, although he did run Nasty Plot Fezandipiti, so I can't discount the opportunity here for setup Fezandipiti. But it doesn't outright deal a bunch of damage. It has to set up to be effective, and it has to remove both Nihilego and, to a degree, Archaludon from play before it's even threatening real damage output here. So it's not a Pokemon, even if it's leaning offense, that has a immediate presence on that front. It needs to clean out a couple of things. So I see 3 to 4 more than likely defensive Pokemon alongside the Bundle and the Cinderace, which are obviously concerns offensively. But just knowing that his team is likely not to be go offense and is trying to withstand some of my pressure, I think is really good for me. It just helps me play my game out a little more cleanly when I can just look in at trying to break through a couple of defensive pieces and break them open that way than trying to withstand offensive pressure or play a really early trade-off game. I don't feel like that's likely to be the case here. So really happy with that team preview. It doesn't scare me in the way it could have scared me if I saw like Weavile as well as Buzzwole, and I just saw all this offensive pressure. That was going to be harder for me to withstand because I don't play very aggressive defense with this team. And so then it turns into winning a couple of predicts, couple of turn one leads or things like that. So I don't have to stress as hard about this. This is more about playing smart and playing consistent in this matchup and just doing the right things to break down a couple of these Pokemon. So looking at my leadoff here, I was really, really careful about that last week with the Regieleki, and I talked a lot about why I was trying to counter lead the way I was. In this matchup, my focus here with my lead is to ensure that I can be as effective as early as possible with some of my damage output. I don't see Skarmory, which is really, really big for me. That tells me Palafin's going to be a pretty good Pokemon early in this matchup, even with the Vaporeon in the game. I can click close combat pretty freely. I can at least bait in Vaporeon maybe a couple of times to enable Meganium. So I want to enable this Palafin as early as possible. I also want to be able to threaten back as a revenge killer against an Iron Bundle in case I do get hit by that bundle combination of Freeze Dry plus Drill Peck to break away my Slitherwing. So I need to be able to be aggressive offensively as early as possible, or at least threaten it. So even though I know it's predictable and I know it can be abused, I want to get that turn 1 Palafin lead in this matchup just to enable it for offense later if I need it to be a revenge killer, because it's my only reliable revenge killer against the Iron Bundle. So he leads the Cinderace. I don't know what it's going to do in this matchup. I don't know if it's Choice Scarf. I don't want to get hit by a Sucker Punch at base form. I don't want to flip turn here because he could just auto switch to Vaporeon because that's a super safe switch in on a Palafin like this. So I'm going to need a hard switch. I feel that's the necessary thing to do here on turn 1. But I need to be careful on how I do that. The most obvious switch in for me here would be sending out Moltres because of the threat of High Jump Kick. High Jump Kick is actually pretty spammable. I don't think he's likely to click a contact move on turn 1 just because of the risk of contacting the Moltres. So I don't see him clicking U-turn. I don't see him clicking High Jump Kick because the risk of getting burned on turn 1 is pretty big for him. And so I don't think he's likely to make that contact move, and I'm going to aggressively call that and go over to Archaludon expecting Gunk Shot to come out, which does, thankfully. So I get that right. Really big turn for me, obviously turn 1. He's locked into poison typing now, so I feel better that even though he might be High Jump Kick still, and he might not be choice locked into being able to click it, the damage output's not going to be enough at this stage to horrify me. And so this feels like a pretty good opportunity to get my Stealth Rocks out early in this match, which I'm happy about. So my rocks go out. I want to chip down this Vaporeon as early as possible, whittle it down, open it up later game. Using Thunderbolt and activating the Wakan Berry right off the bat is also very nice so that it takes that away for later for my Archaludon if he has to do it again. Flash Cannon spam. I can see how very defensive this Pokemon is. Took 39% from a 240 modest Flash Cannon. Rapid Spin, no surprise there, taking away my hazards. I'm going to, I believe, Stealth Rock again on this turn. Yeah, I'm just going to keep the Stealth Rock pressure going. He's boosting my defense to address the Stealth Rocks, which is also great. So even if he wants to use Cinderace as a answer afterwards, he's lost some of that ability. So I'm +2 defense now. I still don't have rocks set on his side, but my defensive status is so good. I'm feeling pretty great about that. He's going for an Earthquake here. Some decent chip, but now my defense keeps going higher. I put rocks out again. He's going to have to Rapid Spin those again. He goes for Rapid Spin, and I'm going to call that right away and just put out more rocks and try to put pressure that way. Because I figured 2 things could happen at that point. Either he's going to keep getting in a Rapid Spin and just keep spinning and spinning, and that's going to get my defense to +4 and get my health slowly back up to 100. Or eventually he's going to have to stop Rapid Spinning and click Earthquake. So I'm going to double click Stealth Rock 2 turns in a row here. And then give him the impression that I am going to keep clicking Stealth Rock regardless of what he does. So maybe that he goes for that Earthquake, and if I can time that turn right, I can KO the Donphan on the same turn it clicks Earthquake and it leaves rocks on its side of the field is the goal here. But I think he's going to call it again successfully right now, and he's going to keep Rapid Spinning. I go for the Flash Cannon here just to remove it from play. So I don't get that predict right, which is fine. It was unlikely to play out in my favor. I was just hoping to get lucky on that opportunity. But with 3.5 defense, the Cinderace is no longer an answer. He sends out Vaporeon. I don't know what it's going to do, but I want to get my rocks back out again just while I figure out what's going on. So I feel the rocks pressure is real because he was trying very, very hard to stop it. So I want to get rocks and control rocks. He roars, catches me by surprise a little bit. Good phasing. I get Moltres out. I get Moltres out for free. And so with that in mind, with his rocker already removed, with his spinner already removed, and with opportunities in front of the Pheasantipity, Rotom-Mow, and Vaporeon, I feel like I have more opportunities to get Stealth Rocks out here. And so for now, I would rather clear off all of the hazards since it was given to me like this. I wasn't going to naturally fish for it, but since Moltres was forced out by the roar, I figure I'll take advantage of that and just get the field cleared again and then reset him later because I still see 3 good opportunities to do that. Maybe 4 if the Cinderace is not, or the Cinderace is locked out of a typing that isn't fighting, so I can at least be bulky enough to get him up once. So I defog here is what I'm trying to say in long words. And he baton passes, so he's going to get in his bundle for free, which is going to force me to switch out the Slitherwing to withstand that. It goes for the flip turn, which is good chunk damage here. It's going to get in his Cinderace, which I need to predict here. I don't think he's carrying Pyroball in this matchup, is my expectation. He maybe was wary enough of rain and the dangers of it that he's not going to click or bring Pyroball, and he doesn't really need it if we're looking at this team setup closely here. Gunk Shot does really great damage to a lot of Pokemon, including my water types. High Jump Kick is really great for Archaludon, really great for Nihilego. U-Turn is there if he needs it for momentum. I think it's a little riskier, but it's there. And then Sucker Punch is obviously pretty strong to help address the Palafin later in the game, address the Nihilego, things like that. So I don't expect Pyroball here, but I need to switch out all the same. I'm going to go Moltres, expecting he doesn't go for Gunk Shot again since I called it the first time. And he doesn't. He clicks a move I did not even realize that Cinderace has, which is Smackdown. So really great tech for this matchup. Really good specific answer to Moltres. It absolutely rocks me. I had no visibility or awareness of that when I was prepping. Didn't even check Cinderace's move pool, which is a little embarrassing for me. I have been a big Cinderace user in OU since his introduction in Gen 8, while he was legal in Gen 8. I have used him a lot in Gen 9. I pick him up occasionally for draft. Like it's a move I should have been aware of existed. And I just was such an oversight by me, and I didn't realize how great of an answer he had to the Moltres with this Cinderace. So he calls that I'm going to actually switch into Moltres this time, and he really, really punishes me for it. So really well done. At least the only positive here is I don't need Moltres much in this matchup anymore. It's quite clear that this Cinderace was going to be able to address that without much issue. He doesn't have Buzzwole. The Donphan's been addressed. So the value here for Moltres was fairly limited at this stage of the game. And so at least, even though I lost a Pokemon I didn't want to lose like that, it opens me up to getting free rocks at this point and ideally being able to keep those rocks. I don't think he has Rapid Spin plus Court Change. I think he's committed to Donphan being his only hazard removal. And so I think rocks are super safe at this point, even if this isn't choice locked, and I'm getting the impression it is choice locked based off of that damage output and based off the fact that he still didn't try to high jump kick the Archaludon the first time, that it's locked in on a move here, which is going to really make the stealth rocks dangerous and effective. And so I get those out safely again. I've got a Vaporeon in front of me. I'm going to keep chipping that down. That opens up my game later for the Nihilego and for the Palafin if I can clear that out of play. Cinderace comes in. You can see from that damage that it is indeed taking chip from the rock, so it's definitely not heavy-duty boots. I'm getting the impression it's choice band, but it could also be choice scarf, so I'm trying to scout that out a little bit. My fear here is high jump kick, and so I want to switch to the best answer I have for high jump kick, which is the Slitherwing. Unfortunately, he once again makes a really, really aggressive call, and I want to give him credit for that because he knew I would not sit in front of him, or he suspected I would not sit in front of him with Archaludon, expecting either high jump kick or U-turn or something to that sort. So he just calls the predictable switch out and takes full advantage of that and gets a Gunk Shot KO. So really well done by him. Great move here. I could go Archaludon and just take advantage of the fact that I think he's locked into a move which I have immunity to, but Archaludon's doesn't really offer a lot of pressure here. He's probably going to send out Rotom-Mow, who I can't do any real damage to. He could send out Vaporeon, who I do limited damage to. There's no good opportunity for Archaludon to pressure hard there, but Nihilego, I think, is really well enabled right now. I'm, in fact, confident this Pokemon is choice locked, the Cinderace, and so this feels like the best window I've had so far to go for that Meteor Beam setup, and so I feel like I should make the effort here right now to get that going. So he sends Vaporeon out, likely expecting the same thing from my front. I click Meteor Beam, I get that special attack boost. I hit with the Meteor Beam, so I get the KO to get the speed boost I need, which is really, really great. He goes in straight with Iron Bundle, and Iron Bundle loses 24% right off the bat. This makes me very, very nervous. I now fully expect that this bundle is going to be Choice Scarf as his singular answer to this Nihilego. So he's sending in the bundle here, probably to click for Hydro Pump, or if he's being really, really cautious, flip turn to chunk me for major damage and just make sure I'm in range for either it to come right back in or Sucker Punch from Cinderace to clean me up. So he's going to go for that flip turn. He is, in fact, faster than me, does massive damage. Sends out the Fezandipity. Thankfully, my Sludge Wave is super safe here, and it does just enough to put the Fezandipity out of play. And now with that second speed boost, I will be faster than the Iron Bundle, which is great. He's going to come in with Cinderace, though, and so I have to make a decision here if he's bluffing or if he's going for Sucker Punch. I don't have a non-attacking move, unfortunately, so I do have to lock myself into an attack if I'm going to sit here with Nihilego. And so it's a tough spot for me because if I'm wrong, then Nihilego is obviously out of play. But looking at the situation of the matchup, it's going to be very difficult for Nihilego to be able to get in again safely in front of the Rotom-Mow, who is the most likely thing to abuse. I could probably hard switch out here to Palafin and go for a flip turn, assuming Sucker Punch is what's going to happen here. I could go Palafin and go for, no damage on the Sucker Punch, and then flip turn, maybe bait out the Rotom-Mow and then Sludge Wave again in front of that. But I'm going to chance my luck here that it's not Sucker Punch. I'm wrong, obviously, is the case here. So I'm going to lose my my Nihilego, but I feel okay about how that's playing out right now. I know he's locked into Sucker Punch. I'm now coming in with Meganium. I don't think his likely switch out is going to be the bundle. I think he wouldn't want to sack that. He would need the speed for later in the game to win, because without bundle, there's no real path to victory. So I don't see bundle as the most logical switch in. So I feel like this is a good Trailblaze opportunity in front of likely bringing in the Rotom-Mow, who I think is more likely than not to be slotting Will-O-Wisp over Thunderwave, just because Will-O-Wisp is good for shutting down the Palafin, good for shutting down the Slitherwing, and I feel like that is just a more effective move to slot. Good for shutting down the Dugtrio if it doesn't want to risk Leaf Storm missing. So I felt like he would be more likely to carry that over Thunderwave. So I'm going to go for Trailblaze here. I'm wrong on what he's going to do here. He is going to go for the hard switch in here, which is surprising. It works out in his favor. I don't know that it was necessarily the right call. I think if he had let that get Solar Beamed the way I was trying to Solar Beam there, then Palafin just wins that game. He loses his bundle. He's forced to come in with Cinderace. I'm going to send out my Archaludon, regardless of whether it high jump kicks or gunk shots the Archaludon. Even if he KOs it there, I'm able to come back in with my Palafin, click flip turn safely, get Meganium in freely in front of the Rotom-Mow, click Weather Ball. The path to victory was so clean if I had sacked the Iron Bundle here. So I didn't necessarily agree that this was the right call in this situation. I thought Rotom-Mow was the more practical and keep the bundle lively, or at least sack the Cinderace there or whatever the case was. But he gets really lucky. I don't want to say lucky. He made some smart calls here. He took a chance, and the chance pays off that the bundle is still alive. It's bundle's last switch in, thankfully, is the silver lining here. It can't switch out again because of the rocks. And so I need to consider what I want to do here. It's going to likely click Ice Beam, so I could call that and go Palafin. But if he clicks Freeze Dry here, then I'm in a really bad situation. So I could go Palafin, sack Palafin if I have to, come back in with Archaludon and clean it up. But that only leaves me making Meganium, and I'm not going to be able to withstand the gunk shots very well. And so that's a tough spot to be. I could sit in here and try to survive the attack, and I did calc that. And so I have literally a 50-50% to survive Ice Beam from a Modest Nature, or at least a Special Attack boosting nature Iron Bundle. And so I need to decide what 50-50 I want to play here. I either chance it with the Palafin, risk losing it as a cleaner for late game against the Cinderace, or I chance the Archaludon that it's going to be something I can sack here, although Archaludon doesn't make a lot of sense for me to switch into. I think I just lose that with no real gain. Jet Punch isn't going to do the damage I need to KO, even at this range, for the Iron Bundle, most likely. And I'm not faster than it because it's Scarf. So I think I need to play my 50-50 here, and so I'm going to go for the Mega Meganium survival chance and hope I get it. And I do. Miraculously, I survive with a pretty low roll at that. I Trailblaze again just because the move I click doesn't really matter. He's going to come in with Cinderace. I've only revealed one move here so far, which is actually really, really great for me. Since Mega Meganium pretty much always wants to slot Synthesis, and this is like a rare matchup, I'm not bringing that. He doesn't get to just auto-click Sucker Punch here. He has to really consider what he wants to do. Because if he clicks Sucker Punch and I Synthesis, the game's really, really over. And so he just needs to predict out what I'm going to do here. I think he should always click Sucker Punch, but he's afraid of the Synthesis. Anyway, I Earth Power because I need to attack what's in front of me. I feel like regardless, I can still break through this Rotom-Mow, even with the two Pokemon I have left, the Palafin and the Archaludon. Its stab options are resisted by the Archaludon. Even though I'm only going to be Flash Canning it back, I can fish for some special defense drops with those Flash Cannons. It's not really able to pressure me very, very hard. And then Palafin can ultimately win with the Wave Crash or Close Combat if it needs to. So anyway, this comes in. I'm going to click Weather Ball here. It's pretty bulky. It actually survives the Weather Ball. Clicks Will-O-Wisp. I think at this point, not really anything it can do. So I'm down to 1 HP, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to click Weather Ball and close this one out. So Mega Meganium is thankfully able to come in and clean up for once. It gets 3 KOs. It gets the Bundle, the Cinderace, and the Rotom-Mow. So Mega Meganium is on the leaderboard now. Not very high up, but at least on there. My Nihilego was once again able to pick up a couple of KOs, so it's still, I think, at the top or near the top of the leaderboard. And then the rest of the team is kind of just hanging out in the back. Palafin's really good at picking up like 1 KO a week kind of thing. I don't think he got any this week, but he's pretty good at picking up like 1 KO. So I moved to 3-0, positive 12 differential. Really strong start to the season. This matchup was really, really tricky. Definitely the worst single Pokemon matchup I will probably face this season. So I really do not want to run into Fluvyx again. But I was able to skirt around that this one time. Any potential rematch will be really, really scary for me because I don't think I can lean on that again, especially after I've talked about how Slitherwing can be pretty easily beat by the Iron Bundle. So I will need to look at other solutions or other strategies for any potential rematch. But at least for this one, I was able to skirt that disaster, get a couple of favorable turns like the Ice Beam 50-50, as well as a couple of helpful predicts early on to get those rocks up that really enabled me to control the amount of mobility his team was allowed to have or able to have without whittling itself down beyond repair. And so I was able to make the most of that and come away with the win. So 3-0, positive 12, much more favorable matchup for next week. Not that I'm in any better position to win it, just that there's no special ice with freeze dry to have to navigate, no Urshifu to have to navigate. So it feels like a clean slate for once where I'm not having to deal with old stuff from previous weeks or old problems that I've been having to deal with all season. So it's a fresh matchup and I'm really looking forward to that one. So stay tuned for it.